All right, we're joined now by Anson Carter. Anson, thank you very much for your time. I want to start off by asking you about getting into hockey. Granted, I know you're from Toronto. I know that's a big part of it, but what was it specifically that got you interested in the sport?
You know, Coley, to be honest with you, like being in Toronto, you got no choice but to like the game of hockey because you're submerged in it. It's everywhere. And it was the speed, it was the skill, and just the fun of being able to skate around on these two little thin pieces of blades that were like almost like knives and do what players do. That's what really forced me and, had me gravitate towards the sport because I love playing street hockey in Toronto with your stick and a ball and you play with your friends, or I brought a puck to school and we played what we called foot hockey at recess time. But everyone kept saying, Anson, you can make all these moves in the street, but you can't skate. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I can't skate. So that's what forced me to take my game onto the ice.
Yeah, how'd you learn to skate?
But trial by fire, a lot of fat lips, a lot of bumped heads. Remember, I grew up during the time where we didn't wear helmets on the ice. We didn't wear helmets to ride our bikes or skateboard. So my parents always told me, if you can't hear, you'll feel. That's an old school Bajan Caribbean proverb they used to always tell me. So I went out there and I fell down, got back up again.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Well, as we were just mentioning before we came on here, I'm from the South. I can't imagine even trying to ice skate. I've tried it once or twice. I'm not very good myself, so I would have had a lot of fat lips myself too. I want to transition and ask you about Michigan State. I know you were, of course, drafted by Quebec before you headed to college. What was that process like, getting drafted and then heading to Michigan State? What got you to Michigan State for those 4 years before you began your pro career?
It was actually a surprise that I got drafted. I played Tier 2 junior in Canada. We won a championship with Wexford Raiders under Coach Butler. And we had so many players that went to school. That's why I played for Coach Butler. Like, he was notorious for developing hockey players and guys earning scholarships, and his teams won. So that's why I went and played with Wexford. And it's just ironic that their colors were green and gold, and Michigan State's colors are green and white. And being in Toronto, I wasn't really that familiar with the college hockey scene because everyone plays major junior hockey in Canada. They go to the OHL if you're from Ontario Hockey League. So when I think I was 12, 12 or 13, I received my first scholarship offer from Coach Sean Walsh at University of Maine. And the offer started slowly trickling. I was getting 30 or 40 letters a day. Coach Newell Brown offered me a scholarship from Michigan Tech. That was my second offer. But I narrowed it down to Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Harvard, and Maine. And I thought, after I went to Michigan State under Coach Ron Mason, when I went there, it couldn't get any better than that. And Coach Mason's college coaching tree was deep. Now, besides Coach Walsh, you mentioned Gwozdecki, Newell Brown, like so many college coaches coached under Coach Mason. And he was the winningest college hockey coach at the time that, for me, it was a no-brainer. When I went on campus, I fell in love with East Lansing. A lot of great people, a lot of great friends I still stay in touch with today. And I tell people all the time, I played the National Hockey League at its highest level. My 4 years on campus, by far my best 4 years of my life.
Wow. Why is that?
Because you learn so much, you grow so much as a person. You become who you are, who I am today from being on campus. You don't have mom and dad to lean on. Yes, my parents were a phone call away, but they're also a 4-hour drive away, a 7-hour train away. So I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. And a lot of the students on campus, you're all figuring out the same thing on your own too. So it's, trial by fire. You make mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes, and we all just grew collectively together.
Yeah, something that you just said that I'm kind of interested in is you were almost a Wolverine. You had a chance to go down to the rival. What was it between those two schools that was the ultimate deciding factor for Michigan State instead of Michigan?
You're right. I love those helmets. I don't want to admit it now because I hate the helmets now, but at the time, I love those helmets. Coach Mel Pearson spent a lot of time recruiting me. He's actually the head coach of the Wolverines now. And he did a tremendous job of recruiting me. And, Coach Red Berenson, the program hadn't really started to take off just yet. And Michigan State, I thought, in my own opinion, was the best program in the country, hands down. It wasn't even close. But I thought Michigan was a close second. And Michigan eventually came. As much as I don't want to admit this, I think they've surpassed Michigan State with the success they've had in recent years. But eventually Michigan State should get back to that same level. But I was really close. We had a couple guys from Wexford, Tim Hogan, I believe, and Al Sinclair that went there in Michigan. We had a few guys from Wexford play at Michigan State, Mike Burkett, Kelly Harper, Steve Guala, Steve Norton. So I had guys from the program I came from that went to both schools that I could bounce ideas off of. But at the end of the day, I thought Michigan State and Coach Mason and Coach Newton and Coach McAuliffe had the best program for me.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's good stuff. I know that while you were at Michigan State, you had a number of honors that you were selected to. You had 106 goals while you played for the Spartans. What was your most memorable moment from your time in college as a hockey player?
I think probably scored my first goal against the University of Western Ontario, because you keep hearing about college hockey and you have captains practices and you have your own practices, but nothing was like skating on Munn Ice Arena for my first game. It's an exhibition game against a Canadian team, which I was familiar with the University of Western Ontario because my sister Michelle played soccer there. And college or university hockey isn't that big back in Canada. But you're playing against some of those guys in that team are 25, 26 years old. They played junior hockey, and now they're playing college hockey or university hockey in Canada to finish up their career. So getting on the ice, scoring in my first goal, and hearing that band play for the first time at Munn, like I've been in the arena and hear the band and experiencing the band, but to be on the ice and have the band going off, Coley, when you score a goal, it was the best feeling ever. And then walking back to my dorm, I lived at Wonders, which is across the street at Munn Field there, and high-fiving the girls and the guys that live in my dorm after the game. It was an amazing feeling. It's something I'll never forget.
Oh, that's really awesome. I'm getting goosebumps just hearing that story right now. Of course, after Michigan State, you have an 11-year career in the NHL. You played for a number of teams. It seemed tough for you at times to stick with a team for a while. Why do you think that may have been?
It was because of contracts. It was the business of hockey. I learned right away, even at Michigan State, I was a 10th round draft pick, and I never spoke to the Colorado Avalanche once. Not one time. Think about that for a second. Your Hobey Baker Award candidate is the best player in the country. You're an All-American. You're a World Junior Champion. My sophomore year, I put the best under 20 players in the world for Team Canada. We won the gold medal. And I never talked to the Quebec Nordiques / the Colorado Avalanche one time. One time. Whereas other guys that I knew that were prospects in their teams talked to their teams all the time. Now, you don't have to be rocket science to understand why that is. I have to believe that if I was a white hockey player, I would have heard from them. When my first rookie deal that I signed, Washington kept saying, well, you're a 10th round pick. You're a 10th round pick. Well, I watched Brian Holzinger, who I think was a 6th round pick for the Buffalo Sabres, get first round money. He never won a World Junior Championship, I don't think. He was a Hobey Baker Award winner. He was an All-American, but what's the difference? Yeah. So clearly every time my deal was up, I could give example after example. Boston Bruins, my deal was up, and I remember I got a phone call. I called my agent, Pat Brisson. I said, hey, Breeze, I'm reading the paper right now. I think it was the Boston Globe, that Carter's being greedy, but Thornton and Samsonov negotiations are going smooth. So I called Breeze. I'm like, hey, Breeze, what the hell is going on? Are you talking to the Bees right now? He goes, no, why? We haven't started negotiations. And I said, well, this is what it's saying in the newspaper. So I call up Big Joe, and Joe is like, oh, I'm so pissed right now, Ace. I'm so pissed. I want out of here. This is a joke. They're grinding me right now. So they had started with Joe. They hadn't started with me, but they're calling me greedy to make me look like the black greedy athlete. So I had to hold out. So every single time I knew when my deal was up, I had to fight for my money and try to get paid for what was right. And I wasn't asking to set the market. Mm-hmm. Every time your deal was up, the National Hockey League Players Association sends you comps of guys have similar stats that you are. And it's like 10 guys or so. So you can sort of decide where in that group you want to be. I always want to place myself in the middle of that group, not set the tone, not be the bottom, in the middle. And every single time I had to hold out to be in the middle. Let that sink in for a little bit.
That's unbelievable. Why? Well, I'll put it this way. Do you think that the NHL has begun to kind of change and maybe not just the contracts, but also maybe the perception of Black players? And the reason I ask is because you have the Jerome McGinleys of the world, you have the Evander Kanes, you have the Subban brothers. Have you started to detect some changes in that regard after your career?
100%. 100%, 1,000%. Remember when Iggy and I played during the same time, but Iggy never had dreads. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference there. Like, I don't care what anyone says. If you put a picture of me side by side with Iggy, someone looks more black than the other. And I'm not questioning Iggy's blacks. I'm just keeping it real. I'm just letting you know, like, I had locks. He didn't have locks. So he was allowed to establish himself in that market in Calgary. He could have to slow starts every single year. And there was never, ever a rumor about Jerome McGinley being traded. I would score 28 goals and teams were like, oh, we can't pay you. What do you mean you can't pay me? You know what I mean? Like, it didn't make any sense, but I always knew what time it was. Nobody was fooling me. I was aware of it. But to answer your question, yes, 1000% do I think things are different. Just like society, we've had a social awakening. Well, the same thing's happening in sports. And the NHL is not any different. NHL is being run by a lot of smart people. And I think when you see all the stuff that NHL has coming out, the NHL Players Association, the players, current players and former players, everyone thinks that the league is following and jumping on the bandwagon over like the George Floyd incident and all the social awakening that's been happening. But to be honest with you, this has been in the works the last 3 years. Since Commissioner Bettman hired Kim Davis, this has been happening behind the scenes. This stuff's only come to fruition now, but those things didn't trigger all the stuff the NHL's put into place. Gary Bettman, the commissioner, has had that foresight to understand that this is where the world is going. We need to change. The world is changing. So let's get ahead of this. So yes, I give the league tons of credit because I'm telling you, if they weren't, I'd call them on. That's what I do. I'm an analyst, right? So it's my job to assess a situation and tell you like it is. So, and I wouldn't want to be a part of it if it wasn't the case, but the league, the Players Association, everyone's down to make this league and the sport a safer place.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you about that. I've noticed that you have been very outspoken with holding the feet to the fire, so to speak, making sure the NHL is following through on some of the things that it's promised. And I guess I want to ask you, what are some of the ways that you feel like you are contributing to making sure that that progress is happening within the league?
Well, along with PK Subban, I'm the co-chair of the Players Inclusion Committee. And we're a subcommittee underneath the Executive Inclusion Council, which is co-chaired by Kim Pegula, owner of the Buffalo Sabres, and Commissioner Gary Bettman. You've got a lot of team presidents and owners on that council that, you know, we all report to. And my Players Inclusion Committee has Olympic champion Megan Duggan, has Blake Bolden, the first Black female scout for the LA Kings. It has Julie Chu, U.S. Olympian, Sarah Nurse, Canadian Olympian. It has George Larac, Jamal Mayers. It has, you know, Jacob Slavin, Kevin Shattenkirk, Ryan Reeves. I mean, I could go on and on with the players, the current players and former players. But the reason why I say it's players, it's not the NHL players. We're overseeing all players, male and female. And we're a diverse group that we're trying to increase the food chain of BIPOC and women in leadership positions in the game, whether it's coaches, scouts, general managers. We want to hold people accountable so that if funding is going towards USA Hockey or Hockey Canada, that there's certain rules and metrics that they have to abide by. If you're not going to do X, Y, Z at the grassroots level, we don't want you to receive any funding from us, period. Mm-hmm. So those are a couple things that I could just rattle off the top of my head that we're working on. And it's important for me to point out that this whole group is about the work, because I get so annoyed when people keep saying hockey's not doing anything. If there's individuals or groups that say, well, NHL's not doing anything. See, I told you. It's because they don't know, or it's because they're trying to deflect. Now, at the Big Ten Network, do you guys spend time talking about the SEC or the ACC? No, you're focused on the work you're putting in the Big Ten Network. Right. So if you're busy talking about the SEC and the ACC, what you're telling me you're trying to do is deflect me from knowing or asking you questions about what you're doing yourself as an individual or as a group.
I wanted to ask you about the comparison between USA Hockey and Hockey Canada. I'm just curious when it comes to dealing with some of these issues of race and how people are perceived, how people of color are perceived within both sets of hockey within the both countries. I'm just curious, what are the comparisons between your experiences in USA as well as in Canada?
Well, in Canada, they're all in right now. You know, it's all about understanding the metrics. For the longest time, these organizations never really collected the data on who their participants are, where they came from, how long they've been playing, why they're playing. You have to understand all this stuff so we can start putting these programs in place and start putting a plan in place to try to retain these young players or try to reach out and get more players that are playing or from non-traditional places of the game. And that's one thing that we're starting to see now with Hockey Canada. We're getting USA Hockey now on board, and it's a continual approach from us, a constant approach from us to keep pushing them. We need to push USA Hockey even harder. We need to push Hockey Canada even harder. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's never enough. But that's okay. It's no different than being a professional athlete. I never woke up, say my third year in the league, and said, I'm in the league right now. I can just sit back and chill and go drink like Dom Perignon and eat caviar and just enjoy my best life. No, every single day, you're pushing yourself to be better and better. So that's our job as the Players Inclusion Committee, to keep continually pushing USA Hockey and Hockey Canada to be better and to be better, because it's never going to be good enough. And that's okay, never to be good enough. But if you stop trying, we're like the Grim Reaper. We're going to come knock on the door and just make sure we're holding you accountable.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. One thing I do also want to ask you is I've noticed recently in a recent interview, I should say, your daughters apparently think that you didn't play hockey. They said, according to you, they said they thought you were a hockey card enthusiast, that you sold hockey cards. How can we convince them what the truth really is?
I don't know, to be honest, if they could be convinced. I mean, I even have action figures behind me. Okay, like, can you be like a bum and have action figures? Like, come on. And they still, I mean, I guess it's because I never really walked around, or I don't really talk about being a hockey player that much. This is my job now. This is what I do. I talk about hockey. I enjoy being around the game. I love talking to people about the game of hockey, but it was never who I was. You know what I mean? So I was able to, separate Anson Carter, the hockey player, from Anson Carter, the person. So I think that's probably the biggest reason why that they don't really think I played hockey at a high level, because it was never a big deal when we're at the house talking about sports or hockey. I never ingrained it into their mind that Daddy played hockey at its highest level. Daddy did this, Daddy did that, because that wasn't really concerned. Like, when you're a parent, the only thing I'm concerned about is what they're doing. How they're doing in lacrosse, how they're doing in soccer, making sure their grades are up to snuff. That's my concern. So whatever I did was in the past. And if they want to think I was a hockey card seller, so be it.
Last question for you is, how does it feel to be a pioneer?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think I'm a pioneer. I think people like Willie is the pioneer.
Yeah.
I think people like Val James are pioneers. People like Grant Fuhrer are pioneers. I think about the people that came before me. I don't think of myself as a pioneer. I think of myself as, those guys that are out there on the streets that smooth those roads over when there's potholes. Well, I think I'm one of those guys. Like, I'm not there that laid the road down initially. I travel on those roads, but I'm there to fill in those potholes to make sure the group coming after me doesn't have to blow their tires out. There's a lot of things that I did during my career that if I had some guidance, I might have done things differently. So that's kind of my goal right now. Like, I can't play anymore. That part of my life is over and done with. I'm very happy with that. I don't resent anyone for that. But now I get the opportunity to help younger players coming up after me, to kind of show them what's important, to try to help them maximize their career earnings, help them maximize their ability to win championships, hopefully too, but also maximize their longevity in the game.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. I might start using that one myself. Anson Carter, you might not feel like a pioneer, but you are certainly a Big Ten impact pioneer. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anytime. Go Green.